Welcome to the Charred Oak Chess Club's YouTube channel, and in today's video, we're going to see a great attacking plan by Siebert Tarrasch. We're also going to see how his game analysis was ahead of his time, but he also missed some key details that needed some further review. So here we go. Starts with a Queen's Gambit declined, Bishop to f4, Pawn to c6, and now we have our first note. Irving Chernev, where this book comes from, writes, "Instead of this meek move, Black should have attacked the center by pawn to c5. So this is obviously taken from Tarrasch's own notes. And the reason for that is Tarrasch really believed that the only correct way to play the Queen's Gambit was to play pawn to c5. The Tarrasch defense is obviously very good. A lot of players are using it today. There's nothing wrong with it. But c6, there's nothing wrong with either. This is just the main line of the Queen's Gambit declined. The idea being that white will either take, and we'll take back with our e-pawn. That's going to bring our bishop into the game. Or, if we want, we could wait till later, like after pawn to e3, castle kingside. Let's just see what this looks like. We can play moves where if white moves their bishop, now we take, and white has to wait to move. And now we can get creative and start playing moves like b5 and stuff. And this is going to get our bishop to b7, and we'll later push c5. So there are ways to get that light squared bishop into the game. And so even though c5 is an attacking move, it's definitely not the only correct move here. But Tarrasch believes it was only the correct move. And to be fair, a lot of his opponents didn't play the c6 line correctly. So here we go. Pawn to h3, giving an escape square. And now knight to e4. And this is the big kind of exclamation point move of the game. The knight is immediately going after e4, which of course is a good square for black to control in any d4, d5 opening. But they're not really controlling that square. It's kind of weak. And Tarrasch writes that this is the decisive error. After the exchange of knights, black's capturing pawn becomes weak and needs the protection of the f5 pawn. It is then attacked by f3, forcing black to exchange and open the g file for white. Thereupon, they choose a combined attack of white's queen, both rooks, and the dark squared bishop against the g-pawn, the keystone of the castle position. An attack which is irresistible. I know of no game in all of chess literature in which it is possible to conceive so detailed a plan, yada 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 yada. Okay, we get it, you're a genius. Anyways, let's go back to that move and see if there's any way with all this modern, engines and theory, just any ways we can make this move work. But this is what happened in the game, capture, capture. We're expecting maybe f5 right away or f5 in the future. Knight goes back to d2, attacking the pawn, putting some pressure on it, and now black plays a move that we really don't like. And Tarrasch knew this was a terrible move as well. Bishop to b4. Why are you giving up your only good bishop, right? All your pawns are on light squares. You're going to give up your dark squared bishop just to trade for a knight? Okay, yeah, we won't be able to take the pawn, but there's a million other ways you could defend this, right? You can play f5, you can bring the knight to f6. Where are we going for this move? I would have preferred like queen to a5. Right? It kind of does the same thing, but it keeps your bishop where it belongs. Let's see what Tarrasch has to write about this move. Had black foreseen the consequences of my plan, which could hardly have been expected of him, he would have retained the bishop for the protection of the g7 pawn. Okay, so fair enough. Let's go back to the game. a3, capture, capture, and now white is going to have way too much fun in this game. This is a great attacking game, and we're going to see how Tarrasch really executes it perfectly. So castle kingside as black, queen to c2, attacking that e4 pawn. Black has to defend with f5. We can see that this e-pawn is pretty weak, and just the center is weak in general for black, right? So how is white going to attack? Are they going to throw f3? No. Bishop, rook moves aside, and now castle queenside. You always castle before you attack. I think this is something, this is one of two moves in these games actually that a lot of club players struggle with, right? It's like, oh, I want to go for this attack. I know this attack's going to be good. I don't really want to castle because like my castle is so open. This looks really bad. I don't want like a rook coming here and pinning my queen. You got to commit to a side, right? You can't just stay in the center if you're already moved your pawns in the center. You got to castle to one side and then start attacking like crazy. And you should be very confident here as white because this bishop hasn't moved. These rooks aren't connected and this knight needs to go back to f6. So for all these reasons, we should feel very confident and start attacking. Knight goes out, bishop goes back because it doesn't want to get eaten by the queen. Bishop goes to d7, not really a great move, but we got to connect a rook somehow. f3, we're starting to chip away at these pawns. Capture, capture. And now pawn to b5, and my favorite move here, it's a very simple rook g1. Of course we were going to play rook g1, but why is this my favorite move? Well, a lot of club players, when they see b5 and they know that they're being attacked, they want to somehow defend this first before they attack, right? But this is a tempo-winning game. We can't take this kind of time. And many times, if you've ever played the King's Indian defense as white, and you try to play the same-ish variation, where you castle queenside and you just attack on opposite sides, when you see moves like b5, right, it's very tempting to somehow handle this position. But anything you do is going to take away from your attack, and if you look very closely, there's no good moves here, right? Like if I take, obviously this is bad, right? Take, and we play rook g1 now, and now we've run into some problems, right? We're going to lose our queen. Okay, so obviously that's not very good. But let's play something a bit more, I don't know, a bit better. Let's play b3, right? Okay, b3, again, if capture, this becomes open, we don't like that. Or even like if capture and like queen captures now, this is just taking away from our attack, right? So this doesn't seem very good. Capturing doesn't seem very good. Pushing doesn't seem very good because black's just going to continue with their plan. And again, we didn't really get anything out of this. So sometimes the best thing to do is just let them take. Like if we play rook g1 and they capture, I can just straight up ignore this and continue to go with my plan. In this exact position, it actually helps us develop the bishop and continue to attack. But let's say that bishop was gone, just let them take. It doesn't really hurt your plan, just continue moving with your plan. Don't worry about what black's doing. So okay, rook g1, rook to f8, trying to help play some defense here. Rook to e8 didn't really do anything. And the rooks are stacking on the g-file. a5's thrown, we don't care, we're going to continue attacking. And now a great move here, knight to e8. This does two things. It defends the g7 pawn, and it makes sure that the white queen cannot get to h4. So great prophylactic move, very defensive. White has to get a little creative here to continue their attack. No one likes an attack that just stops, and then we end up losing the game or have to try to settle for some sort of draw because we can't make progress. Excuse me. So rook to g5. This is a great move. This is a very creative move. I'm just going to block that square so my queen can get there on time. And the best part is, there's nothing that black can do about it. It looks like there should be some pawn move. Like, I don't know. Let's say pawn to g6 or something. Pawn to g6 is just a really bad move because, one, we have a lot of control over here. And now we can just play h4, h5 and break down the structure. All right, let's play a more active move like h6 here, attacking the rook. If the rook moves back, we can say that black successfully accomplished their plan. They're defending that square. Maybe they'll start attacking on the queen side again. Who knows? But what could white do here? Well, we play pawn to g6. And now we're going after this pawn takes h6 move, making use of the pin. We're also ready to just continue to stack and attack, right? So queen goes over here, attacking the g7 pawn. But now after this, it looks like 1, 2, 3, 4 defenders. 1, 2, 3, 4 attackers. When it's even, the defenders win. Nothing we can do on g7. Oh well, game over. We're going to have to think of some other plan. Maybe get this bishop involved. Or we get very creative and say, wait a minute, what if I just attack a completely different pawn here? I'm going to sack my rook. If the king takes, that's obviously going to be checkmate. What happens if we take with this pawn? Well, the bishop's guarding this square, so I can just go to the g6 square here and also get checkmate. So rook g5, kind of a genius move. Black realizes there's nothing to do, just play queen e7, continue to guard. We get our queen into the attack. Queen goes to h6, obviously we can't take. The rook comes to a7, black's not even trying to attack, they're just trying to bring every piece to defend. And now bishop to d6, right? If you can't add any more attackers, you need to remove one of these defenders. And we were expecting maybe a move like bishop takes on f6, but bishop to d6 is just a beautiful move. It completely gets rid of the queen. And now we need to make sure that this works. Capture, king moves to the side, and now a very nice move here. Rook takes on h7 with the discovery. Notice that white doesn't get any aggressive ideas like rook takes rook, or maybe just moving down here and trying to work with this to get checkmate. The best move that they can make is taking this h-pawn, and we're going to see why taking that h7 pawn is going to be important. King goes down here, rook takes rook, we get check, queen takes knight, and in this position, black resigned. Okay, but what's the one thing they could do to try to save this position? After all, they're only down 2 pawns. play queen to f8 here. And now there's no good way for us to get a check that would lead to mate somehow, right? There's all the squares are kind of covered. I can't go in this way. But we could play queen to g6. There is no h-pawn. King's in check. King has to move over. The rook goes down, and now we pick up the queen. And we're up 2 pawns as well. So, it's crazy to think that in this game, Tarrasch broke one of his rules with his bishop staying on f1 the entire game. That bishop did not move. Even the rooks had to work around it to quickly get that attack going. And one of the things Tarrasch once wrote was, as Rousseau could not compose without his cat beside him, so I cannot play chess without my king's bishop. In its absence, the game, to me, is lifeless and void. The vitalizing factor is missing, and I can devise no plan of attack. Well, Tarrasch definitely proves himself wrong. Let's see if we can prove him wrong one more time by looking back at that opening. Obviously, we know c6 is not a mistake. But let's go back to this knight e4 move. The knight e4 move isn't a huge blunder, although it isn't, I would say it's a mistake, maybe an inaccuracy, but maybe a mistake just because it's happening so early in the game. While it's a good idea to try to grab control of this square, you know, Black doesn't have enough time to throw f5 immediately. So this is a little weak. But with that being said, bishop b4 was really, really a bad move because we need that bishop, right? So what could Black have played a little bit differently here? Well, one of the things they could have tried for is just pawn to f5, right? And when the queen comes to c2 with the idea of castling queenside and going with the same plan, Black has a few ways to continue here, but part of it is just going to be making a mess of White's structure, right? And so if you think about like the Scotch game, right, and how Black often has to play d5 in order to defend against this bishop on c4 and all these tactics on f7, right? It's a very similar concept. We're just going to throw the e-pawn, right? Like this was some sort of Albin counter Gambit, right? And by doing so, we're just kind of messing with White's structure and saying, instead of getting this beautiful Queen's Gambit structure, now your pawns look like this, you're blocking your bishop, and now I have a few fun ideas here. One, this d3 square looks really weak, so maybe I'm just going to play knight to c5 and target that square and plant my knight there, right? Or maybe I don't want to do that at all, and I just want to play queen to a5, again going for that pin, and actually we're just going to pick the pawn right back up, right? If you push the pawn, I'm going to play knight to f6. So we're finding creative ways to work with this position. At the end of the day, Black is down a pawn, and they have to be careful of that. And also, the structure might not be exactly what they want. Obviously, it's going to weaken their kingside quite a bit, right? Especially if they try to defend it later on. Or maybe they try to throw g5, like it's some kind of Leningrad Dutch. But of course, this is probably something that you would have to study up quite a bit, and you need to know a few tricks, and you would use it as a surprise weapon once in a while.